speaking of snowy, our snowman, Bob Kravitz, joins us now from bobkravitz.com. Bob, I've got three names just to say: Jim Irsay, Pascal Siakam, and Mike Woodson.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said about the three of those human beings.
Yeah, a lot going on as well. Of course, Jim Irsay, we're hoping that he manages to get through whatever it is that he is dealing with. The Colts have said that he's dealing with a respiratory illness, which very well may be the case. Not sure if that is related to an issue he had over a month ago in December.
Right.
But obviously, I read your piece and agree with it. I'm surprised the NFL doesn't step in a situation like this, because they step in a lot of other situations. And so I'm surprised that they don't step in and say, hey, something needs to be done.
The thing is that it was it wasn't like he was in his car like he was a couple of years ago where he potentially could hurt somebody. This was a victimless crime, unless you count Jim Irsay as the victim, which he most certainly is. I don't know if the league should step in. It's not like a gambling situation or anything like that. I mean, this is a personal situation for Jim, but Jim is the guy who said, let's get rid of Dan Snyder. And
that's what I was actually referring to more so, is because of, and you brightly pointed out some of the decisions that have been made. You're like, was that a reason why?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is with Jim, you don't know when he's just being quirky Jim, and you don't know when he's actually altered on drugs. And I think sometimes decisions have been inspired by his addled existence, and sometimes he's just weird. Like he made the decision to hire Jeff Saturday last year. We don't know if he was under the influence at the time or if that's just him being really quirky. But that's the thing is, as people who paid about $800 million toward Jim Irsay and that stadium, we have a right to know that the guy running this quasi-public enterprise is in his right mind. And clearly he is not. And I don't say that to be punitive, but it's the reality. And I think if you're a fan, you want to know that the guy who's signing off on the big decisions and sometimes making the big decisions is in his right mind. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
The trade the Pacers made, to me, that shows that they're serious as ever about being a player in the playoffs, and not that they weren't already, because they've been sitting in fine situation until this injury to Tyrese Halliburton. But they make a trade that really puts them in an even better position, acquiring Pascal Siakam.
Absolutely fabulous trade. Now, the only way this trade doesn't work out for them is if at season's end he decides to go elsewhere. But I like the risk, and it's a risk they're making without giving up any of their top young studs. Jordan Ware was a rotational guy. Bruce Brown wasn't particularly happy in Indy after signing here as a free agent. He was not going to be back next year, quite likely. Those three draft picks, it sounds like a lot, but they're all going to be between 15 and 22 in the draft list. So it's not like you're going to be losing any stud players. They've already got a ton of young players. They don't need more draft picks. I thought it was a fantastic trade that will only get better if he decides to stay in Indiana. And the early word is that he is really excited about playing with Halliburton and Miles Turner.
And then Mike Woodson, of course, Indiana travels to Wisconsin tonight, where nothing to do with him. They have had a 27-year run of futility at the Kohl Center, unbelievably. Still
Is it
lead the series
27
97.
years?
I think it's 27 years now. It's
Holy.
mind-boggling. But they still lead the series 97-80, which is mind-boggling, even more so. But this is a Wisconsin team that is currently leading the Big Ten right now at a 5-1 record.
Yeah, and I don't like what I'm seeing out of Indiana. We talk about it every week. I thought Gabe Cupps played a pretty good game against Purdue, but I don't know what's going on with Xavier Johnson. He just looks like a lost puppy to me. I was very harsh on him in my column the other day. I don't like being harsh on college kids, even though they do get paid these days. It's not like the old days where they just got an education, supposedly. But this guy, I mean, he gets a flagrant 2 against, what was it, Rutgers? Yeah. Then he comes back, he gets benched for Cupps, and then he does it again. He throws a forearm shiver into Zach Edey, which tells me you're not really smart. Yeah. That is not a smart thing to do. If Zach Edey's in the mood, he's going to put you in tomorrow. So, this is going to be a problem all year unless he figures it out somehow. They don't have a point guard, and that's a real problem in college basketball.
Yeah, if you follow Ken Pom, I was talking about earlier, Indiana right now sitting in the 94th spot according to Ken Pom. But worse yet, Ken Pom has Indiana projected to lose every game the rest of the season except for a home game with Penn State on February 3rd. So now that's not necessarily going to happen, but because there's the game with Northwestern at home is a 50-50 game. But Ken Pom's not going to be that far off.
Right.
So even if they win 3 games, it's not going to be a good finish.
No. And I just don't see any improvement with this team. I really don't. And, I didn't realize it until after I got back from the game about 3:00 in the morning the other night that that loss was their worst home loss to Purdue since 1934. That's pretty astounding. I just thought they played, I thought the whole game was crystallized at the end. Purdue leading by 18. The ball's loose on the floor. Khalil Ware kind of gingerly walks over to it, and Zach Edey goes to the floor, dives, and pushes it ahead to Lance Jones. I think right there, I mean, obviously Purdue's got a ton more talent, but you just saw, maybe not a ton more talent, but they got more talent. But you just saw there what it means to Purdue, what that game meant to Purdue, what it meant to Edey to finally beat these guys, and why Purdue is the number 2 team in the nation. They play like their hair's on fire.
Yeah, and a couple of even more hair-raising stats. Tom Crean's first 3 years of playing against Purdue when Indiana was 6-25 and 10 and whatever, they never lost by this margin to Purdue. Those teams that the 6-25 team had 11 underclassmen on it, mostly freshmen, and did not lose by this margin. So that really puts it in perspective for me.
Well, those weren't quite as great a Purdue teams, granted, back when Crean was facing them, but still, that's pretty telling. And look, Mike has lost a lot of games by a lot of points. Somebody could do the statistical breakdown for me, but
they have.
They especially on neutral courts, they have lost by big margins, more so than I can remember with previous coaches, even the sainted Archie Miller. This is the guy who got $1 million a year raise. I would love for Scott Dolson to be my boss. I mean, he gave Woody $1 million for doing next to nothing. He gave Tom Allen all that money with no, with an incredible buyout. I mean, he's just giving money away out there.
And that's Who becomes accountable for that? And at what point is there accountability? Because I kept talking. I said, Mike Woodson's not going anywhere. Indiana can't do anything about him right now, because if they even begun to thought about it, the buyout added to the buyout, added to the buyout, added to the buyout comes up to $41.6 million Indiana would be paying with 3 consecutive basketball coaches and a football coach right now.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's nothing you can do. You just have to hope that he, as Mike likes to say, get him over the hump, which is what he says every press conference. I just got to get these guys over the hump for my ball club. It was interesting. I don't know if you saw the Dana O'Neill piece in The Athletic, where she suggested that Mike is not the hardest working dude, which I thought, wow, that kind of came out of nowhere. It wasn't sourced, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
First time that's been that's been said. I mean,
no, I know. I heard that. I heard that before he ever took the job, that he wasn't a guy who grinded. But look, I mean, he did what they asked of him early on. He got them to the NCAAs, but that's not enough. It's Indiana, and especially in a state where really the epicenter of basketball is located in West Lafayette. That's embarrassing to be that bad. And look, this is a team that's not devoid of talent. I mean, you've got a really good front court. One of the things that drove me crazy in the Purdue game, Jim, was he put Mbako and Ware on the bench with 2 fouls early and never brought him back. I mean, didn't bring him back.
Forgot about him
until the last TV timeout. By then, it was about a 15, 16-point game.
Kind of reminds me of Auburn, the Auburn game.
Yes, very much so. I don't know if Mike's got a 2-foul rule or whatever, but it ain't working. This isn't like the NBA where your second string guys can really play. I mean, their bench. I mean, they got some guys who can play a little bit, but if you want to compete with Zach Edey and those guys, you got to keep your best players on the floor and take your chances. I mean, the game is getting away. Keep them in there.
And I've seen people say, well, everyone knew there was going to be a learning curve. I'm like, no, I didn't. Why would there be a learning curve? And when you're paying someone that kind of money, there shouldn't be a learning curve. No. Why would there be? Been around, but it's not like if this is your first job, maybe, but it's not. So it is what it is, and it's not going to change. And Indiana fans can jump up on this side or whatever, but I expect to see zero change regardless.
Well, that's a positive outlook, and I agree with you completely. I just think I don't think they're going to make the NCAA tournament. I think this is kind of a lost season, and I think the clock starts ticking on Woodson, like you say. The buyout and the buyout and the buyout. But I think as far as the fans are concerned, he fails to make the NCAA tournament, it's going to get loud around here again.